Wife found a strange ring in her husband's car. But the truth was completely different. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I never thought I'd be the type of wife to go through her husband's things, but there I was, on a Tuesday morning in October, cleaning out David's car while he was at work, my fingers closing around something that would shake the very foundation of our 15-year marriage. It was a ring. Not just any ring, a delicate rose gold band with an intricate Celtic knot design, embedded with tiny diamonds that caught the morning light streaming through the windshield. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't mine. I would have remembered something so beautiful, so distinctly feminine. My hands trembled as I held it up, studying every detail. The metal was still shiny, barely worn, as if it had been recently purchased. The size looked smaller than mine, probably a 6 or 7. My wedding ring, sitting snugly on my finger, was an 8. This belonged to someone else, someone with smaller hands, someone David knew well enough to have their ring in his car. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I sat there in the driver's seat of his Honda Accord, surrounded by the familiar smell of his cologne and the vanilla air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror, holding evidence of what felt like my worst nightmare. How long had it been there? How had I missed it? The ring had been nestled between the seat cushions, invisible, until I decided to do a thorough cleaning before our weekend trip to see my parents. If I hadn't been so meticulous, so determined to present David's car in pristine condition to my judgmental mother, I never would have found it. My mind raced back through the past few weeks, searching for clues I might have missed. Had David been acting differently? The question seemed absurd at first. We'd been together for 17 years, married for 15. I knew his every gesture, his every expression. But as I sat there, the ring burning in my palm like a piece of incriminating evidence, memories began surfacing with uncomfortable clarity. Just last Thursday, he'd come home an hour later than usual, claiming he'd been stuck in a meeting with a new client. But when I'd asked about it later, he'd been vague, dismissive even. "Just business stuff," he'd said, not meeting my eyes as he loosened his tie. David was never vague about work. He was an architect, passionate about his projects, and usually regaled me with detailed accounts of his designs and client interactions. Then there were the phone calls. 3 times in the past 2 weeks, his phone had buzzed with messages while we were having dinner. Each time, he'd glanced at the screen with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not excitement, but not indifference either. Something closer to concern, guilt. When I'd asked who was texting, he'd mumbled about work colleagues and quickly silenced the phone. And just 2 nights ago, he'd taken a shower immediately after coming home, something he never did. David was a morning shower person, had been for as long as I'd known him, but that evening he'd walked straight upstairs without even greeting me properly, claiming he felt grimy from the construction site he'd visited. I closed my eyes, trying to push away the ugly thoughts creeping into my mind. David wasn't the type to cheat. He was steady, reliable, devoted. He still kissed me goodbye every morning, still held my hand during movies, still looked at me with the same warm brown eyes that had captivated me in college. We had our routines, our comfortable rhythms. We were happy, weren't we? But the ring in my hand suggested otherwise. It was too beautiful, too expensive to be casual. This was the kind of ring a man bought for a woman he cared about, a woman he was thinking of seriously. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Someone else was wearing David's attention, his affection, maybe even his love. I stumbled out of the car and back into our house, my legs feeling unsteady. Our home, the colonial we'd bought 8 years ago, with its cream-colored walls and family photos lining the hallway, suddenly felt foreign, like a stage set for a life I'd only imagined I was living. In the kitchen, I made coffee with shaking hands, the ring sitting on the granite countertop like an accusation. Every detail of our morning routine now seemed suspicious. Had David been unusually quiet over his cereal? Had he avoided eye contact when he'd kissed me goodbye? I replayed the scene obsessively, searching for signs I'd missed. The coffee grew cold as I sat staring at the ring. Who was she? Someone from his office? A client? The thought of David with another woman touching her, laughing with her, buying her jewelry made my stomach churn. I'd never experienced jealousy like this before, raw and consuming, like acid eating through my chest. By the time David came home that evening, I had worked myself into a state of barely controlled panic. I'd hidden the ring in my jewelry box, unable to look at it, but equally unable to put it back where I'd found it. All day, I'd rehearsed what I would say, how I would confront him, but when he walked through the door with his usual tired smile, the words died in my throat. "Hey, beautiful," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door and loosening his tie. "How was your day?" I watched him carefully, searching for signs of deception in his familiar face. Did he seem nervous? Was he avoiding my gaze? "Fine," I managed. "I cleaned out your car." Something flickered across his expression, so brief I almost missed it. "Oh, thanks. It probably needed it." He moved toward the kitchen, his movements seeming slightly more hurried than usual. "Find anything interesting?" I asked, following him. David paused in the act of opening the refrigerator. "Like what?" "I don't know, just anything." He turned to look at me then, his brow furrowed. "Sarah, are you okay? You seem tense." The concern in his voice almost broke me. Either he was a better actor than I'd ever given him credit for, or he genuinely cared about my well-being while simultaneously betraying our marriage. Both possibilities felt equally devastating. "I'm fine," I lied, "just tired." That night, I lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing and wondering if he was dreaming about her. Who was she? What did she look like? Was she younger, prettier, more exciting than his middle-aged wife, with her predictable routines and comfortable clothes? The next morning, David left for work with his usual kiss and cheerful goodbye, and I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do. I started going through his things. Systematically, methodically, like a detective building a case. I started with his dresser, checking pockets, looking for receipts, phone numbers, any evidence of his double life. I found nothing except the usual detritus of daily life breath mints, loose change, a business card for a new restaurant downtown that we talked about trying. His laptop proved more challenging. David had always been casual about passwords, using variations of our anniversary date and my name. But when I tried to access his email, I found he'd changed his password. My blood ran cold. Why would he change it now, after years of using the same simple combinations? I spent the afternoon in a haze of suspicion, analyzing every photo on our walls, every shared memory, wondering how long he'd been living a lie. Had our entire marriage been a facade? Had he ever really loved me? Or had I simply been the safe choice while he waited for something better to come along? When David came home that evening, I watched him with new eyes. He seemed distracted, checking his phone more frequently than usual, his responses to my conversation stilted and distant. "David," I said during dinner, my voice carefully casual, "that client you mentioned last week, the one who kept you late on Thursday. What kind of project was it?" He looked up from his pasta, chewing slowly. "Oh, that! Just a residential renovation. Nothing too exciting." "Male or female client?" The question hung in the air between us. David's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Does it matter?" I was just curious. "Female," he said finally. "A widow looking to update her kitchen." A widow. The word sent a chill through me. A lonely woman, probably grateful for David's attention, his expertise, his kindness. It would be so easy for professional boundaries to blur, for comfort to turn into something more intimate. "What's her name?" I pressed. David set down his fork, his expression unreadable. "Sarah, why are you asking me this?" "I can't ask about your work?" "Of course you can. It's just, you seem different lately, suspicious, like you're testing me." The accusation stung because it was true. "I'm not testing you. I'm just interested in your life, in what you do all day while I'm here." "You've never shown this much interest in my clients before." "Maybe I should have." We stared at each other across the dinner table, the air thick with unspoken tensions. David's eyes searched my face, and I wondered what he saw there. Did he know I knew? Was he planning his confession, or was he calculating how to better hide his affair? "Her name is Margaret," he said finally. "Margaret Collins. She's 62 and lost her husband last year. She wants to make the kitchen more accessible because she's using a walker now." The details were so specific, so ordinary, that they rang true. But I'd read enough stories about cheating husbands to know that the best liars always had the most convincing details ready. That night, I lay in bed beside David, my body rigid with tension as he slept peacefully next to me. How could he sleep so soundly with such a massive secret weighing on his conscience? Unless, a small voice in my head whispered, he didn't feel guilty because there was nothing to feel guilty about. But the ring in my jewelry box said otherwise. The following day was Saturday, and David announced he needed to go into the office to work on some blueprints. This was unusual. David rarely worked weekends unless he was facing a major deadline. He'd been talking about taking me to the farmer's market, something we did most Saturday mornings when the weather was nice. "I thought we were going to the market," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Rain check?" He was already putting on his jacket, avoiding eye contact. This project is really behind schedule. After he left, I sat in our empty house, surrounded by the comfortable familiarity of our shared life, and felt completely alone. The walls seemed to mock me with their wedding photos and vacation snapshots, evidence of a happiness that now felt like an elaborate lie. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to know the truth. I drove to David's office building, telling myself I would just drive by, maybe see if his car was really there. But his parking spot was empty. The building looked deserted, as it usually did on weekends. My hands were shaking as I called his cell phone. "Hey, honey," he answered after 3 rings. There was noise in the background voices, music. "Hi," I managed. "How's the work going?" "Oh, slow progress. Listen, I might be here later than I thought. Don't wait up for me if you get tired." The voices in the background grew louder for a moment, before the sound suddenly muted, as if he'd moved somewhere quieter. "Where exactly are you?" I asked. "At the office. Why?" "Just wondering. I was thinking of bringing you some lunch." "That's sweet, but I'm fine. I grabbed something earlier." We hung up, and I sat in my car outside his empty office building, the evidence of his lie burning in my chest. He wasn't at work. He was somewhere else, with someone else, living a life I knew nothing about. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with the implications. How many times had he lied to me? How long had this been going on? The ring could have been in his car for weeks, months even. I might have been the last person to know about my own husband's affair. Sunday passed in a blur of forced normalcy. David was attentive and affectionate, as if trying to compensate for something. He made my favorite breakfast, suggested we watch a movie together, held my hand on the couch like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I felt like I was watching our life through glass, connected to it, but somehow separated from its reality. Monday morning, after David left for work, I made a decision. I was going to confront him. Not with accusations or hysteria, but with calm, direct questions. I deserved to know the truth, and our marriage deserved at least that much honesty. I spent the day planning what I would say, how I would approach it. I would show him the ring, ask him to explain it, and give him the chance to tell me the truth. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe I'd been torturing myself for nothing. But when David came home that evening, my carefully planned confrontation crumbled. He looked exhausted, his usually neat hair disheveled, his tie askew. He dropped his briefcase with a heavy sigh and rubbed his eyes. "Rough day?" I asked. "The worst. The Collins project is turning into a nightmare, and I've got 3 other deadlines breathing down my neck." He looked at me with tired eyes. "I'm sorry I've been so distracted lately. Work has been insane." The mention of Margaret Collins sent a chill through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Maybe you should take a break. We could go away for a weekend, just the 2 of us." David smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. "That sounds perfect. Let me get through this Collins renovation, and we'll plan something special." He moved to kiss me, and I let him, even as my heart broke a little more. How could he be so tender, so loving, while carrying on with another woman? That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the ring, about Margaret Collins, about all the lies and half-truths I'd been fed. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't live like this anymore, caught between suspicion and hope, love and betrayal. Tuesday evening, I waited for David in the living room, the ring in my hand, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. When he walked through the door, I didn't give him time to settle in, to put down his briefcase, to kiss me hello. "David," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "we need to talk." He stopped in the doorway, his eyes immediately focusing on my face, reading my expression with the intimacy of 17 years together. "What's wrong?" I held up the ring, watching his face carefully. "I found this in your car." The color drained from David's face. His briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. For a long moment, we stared at each other across the room, the ring catching the light from the table lamp like a small accusatory star. "Sarah," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just tell me the truth," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "Please, after everything we've been through together, I deserve that much." David moved slowly into the room, his movements careful, as if he were approaching a wounded animal. "Can I sit down?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He sat on the edge of the coffee table, directly across from me, close enough that I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the lines of stress around his mouth that I'd been too caught up in my own fears to notice before. "The ring," he said slowly, "belongs to my sister." I blinked, certain I'd misheard him. "What?" "It's Emma's ring, her wedding ring." The words didn't make sense. Emma, David's sister, lived in California. She'd been married to her husband Jake for 12 years. I'd seen her wedding ring countless times, a simple platinum band, nothing like the ornate piece I was holding. "That's not Emma's wedding ring," I said. "No," David agreed. "It's her new wedding ring, the one Jake bought her for their anniversary." "I don't understand." David rubbed his face with both hands, and when he looked up, his eyes were filled with something I hadn't expected to see. Relief. "Emma's been sick," he said quietly. "Really sick. She was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis 6 months ago, and it's been progressing rapidly. Her hands, they've changed shape. She can't wear her original wedding ring anymore." The words hit me like cold water. "Sick? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because she asked me not to. Emma's always been private, you know that. She didn't want anyone to know, didn't want the pity or the questions. But Jake wanted to do something special for their anniversary, so he had a new ring made one that would fit her hands now, with the arthritis." I stared at him, my mind struggling to process this new information. "But why was it in your car?" "Because Jake asked me to help design it. He wanted something that would accommodate her swollen joints, but still be beautiful, still feel like a symbol of their love. I've been working with a jeweler here in town for the past month, going back and forth on the design, getting it sized properly. The room felt like it was spinning. You've been designing a ring for Emma? I was supposed to give it to Jake last weekend, but Emma's condition got worse. She was hospitalized for 3 days with a flare-up, and Jake flew out there to be with her. He asked me to hold on to the ring until he got back. He's picking it up this Thursday, and they're going to renew their vows this weekend with just the two of them present. I looked down at the ring in my palm, seeing it with completely new eyes. The Celtic knot design that had seemed so romantic, so intimate, now looked like the careful work of a loving brother and brother-in-law trying to create something beautiful in the face of illness and change. The late nights, I whispered, the meetings. With the jeweler. Mr. Peterson only works evenings now, he's semi-retired. And the client I mentioned, Margaret Collins? She really is a 62-year-old widow, but she's also Mr. Peterson's daughter. She's been helping us with the ring, giving advice on what would work best for someone with hand mobility issues. The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. David's secretiveness, his changed password, he'd probably been researching arthritis, looking up treatment options, trying to understand what his sister was going through. The phone calls during dinner were likely from Jake, updating him on Emma's condition. The shower after work might have been because he'd been at the hospital, visiting someone with a compromised immune system. Oh, God, I breathed, the full weight of my accusations, my suspicions, my week of torture crashing down on me. Oh, David, I'm so sorry. He reached across the space between us and gently took the ring from my hand. You thought I was having an affair. It wasn't a question. I nodded, tears streaming down my face now. I thought, the ring was so beautiful, and you were being so secretive, and you just drew the worst possible conclusion. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have just asked. David was quiet for a long moment, turning the ring over in his hands. Maybe I should have told you what was going on, but Emma made me promise not to tell anyone, and I was trying to respect her privacy. I didn't realize how my behavior was affecting you. Why didn't she want anyone to know? Because she's scared. She's only 38, Sarah. She and Jake want to have kids, but with the arthritis and the medications, everything's become complicated. She's not ready to deal with everyone's opinions and advice and sympathy. She just wants to process this privately for now. I wiped my eyes, feeling simultaneously relieved and ashamed. Is she going to be okay? The doctors say yes, with proper treatment. It's going to be an adjustment, but people live full lives with RA. Jake's been incredible through all of this. That's why he wanted the new ring. He wanted her to know that nothing about their love has changed, even if everything else has. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past week settling between us. I thought about all the sleepless nights, the paranoid thoughts, the way I'd dissected every interaction, every word, looking for proof of betrayal that didn't exist. I feel like such an idiot, I said finally. David moved from the coffee table to the couch beside me, pulling me into his arms. You're not an idiot. You're human. And maybe we both learned something from this. What do you mean? I learned that I need to be more open with you, even when I'm trying to respect someone else's privacy. And you learned that I need to trust you more. That I need to ask questions instead of making assumptions. He kissed the top of my head. We've both been taking our communication for granted, I think. After 17 years together, it's easy to assume we know what the other person is thinking, what they need to know. I pulled back to look at him. I was so convinced you were cheating. I went through your things, David. I drove to your office to check up on you. I turned into someone I didn't recognize. Fear can do that to people, the fear of losing someone you love. But I almost destroyed what we have because of that fear. David was quiet for a moment, his fingers stroking my hair. Do you think we're okay? Really okay? I considered the question seriously. The past week had revealed cracks in our relationship I hadn't known existed, my tendency toward jealousy and suspicion, his habit of keeping secrets even with good intentions. But it had also revealed something else, how much we meant to each other. The pain I'd felt at the thought of losing him, the relief in his eyes when he could finally tell me the truth. That was real. That was love. "I think we're going to be more than okay," I said. "I think we're going to be better." "How so?" "Because now we know. We know what it feels like when we don't communicate, when we keep secrets, when we let our fears control us, and neither of us ever wants to feel this way again." David smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him all week. "You're right. No more secrets, even little ones. No more protecting each other from things we think might upset the other person. And I'll work on trusting you, on asking questions instead of jumping to conclusions. We'll work on it together." We held each other on the couch as the evening light faded outside our windows, the ring sitting forgotten on the coffee table. In a few days, it would complete its journey to Jake and Emma, becoming a symbol of love persevering through unexpected challenges. But for now, it had served a different purpose. It had forced David and me to confront the vulnerabilities in our own marriage and emerge stronger for it. Later that night, as we got ready for bed, David paused in the bathroom doorway. "Sarah, for what it's worth, I'm glad this happened." I looked up from brushing my teeth, raising an eyebrow. "Not the pain you went through," he clarified quickly, "but the conversation, the honesty. I feel closer to you now than I have in months." I spit out my toothpaste and turned to face him. "Even though I basically accused you of cheating?" "Especially because of that. Because you cared enough to be devastated by the possibility. Because losing me was your worst nightmare." "It was. It is." "Mine too." We went to bed that night with a new understanding between us, a renewed appreciation for what we had built together. The ring had nearly broken us apart, but in the end, it had brought us closer together. 3 days later, Jake picked up Emma's ring. David introduced me to him properly this time, and Jake shared some photos of Emma from her recent treatment. She looked thin and tired, but her smile was radiant as she showed off her new ring in the pictures. David had done beautiful work. The design was elegant and distinctive, perfectly crafted to accommodate her changed hands while still being unmistakably a symbol of enduring love. "She cried when she first saw it," Jake told us. "Happy tears. She said it made her feel like herself again, like the arthritis hadn't taken away her identity as a wife." After Jake left, David and I sat on our porch with evening coffee, watching the sunset behind the maple tree in our front yard. The same tree we'd planted the year we'd bought the house, young and optimistic and certain that our love could weather anything. "I've been thinking," David said, reaching for my hand. "Maybe we should renew our vows too. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Because we choose to, every day, even when it's hard." I squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar weight of my own wedding ring, simple and worn after 15 years of wear. "I'd like that. And maybe we should plan that weekend getaway we talked about. Just us. No distractions, no work, no secrets. Just us remembering why we fell in love in the first place. And talking about everything. No more assuming we know what the other person is thinking." Deal. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this moment. A week ago, I had been convinced that a small ring was evidence of the end of my marriage. Instead, it had become the catalyst for a new beginning, a reminder that love, real, lasting love, isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to trust, to communicate, to fight for each other even when fear and misunderstanding threaten to pull you apart. The ring had taught me that sometimes the things we fear most reveal the truths we need to hear most. And sometimes, just sometimes, the thing that looks like an ending is actually a new beginning in disguise. Our marriage had survived its test by fire, scarred but stronger, more honest, more intentional than before. And as David and I sat together in the growing darkness, our hands intertwined, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, with open hearts, clear communication, and the hard-won wisdom that love is not just a feeling, but a choice we make again and again, even when, especially when it's difficult. The ring was gone now, serving its true purpose in someone else's love story. But its lesson remained with us, a reminder that trust is fragile, communication is essential, and sometimes the most beautiful surprises come wrapped in our worst fears.